Whilst most of us were so focused on the Danny clip during Jordan Peterson's verse in 20 most of us kind of missed out this one guy, Atheist Ian, who had many questions which I would say most of you guys as atheists actually ask when trying to establish why you don't believe in
Yo,
God.
okay.
What?
Did you know they actually changed the heading from Christian versus 20
Oh,
atheists to Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists?
nope, I did not know that. Why did they change it?
Because of the Danny clip. Here, read this comment from the comment
Oh,
section.
okay. So he's not as stupid as we think he is.
Nah, maybe it's still 20%, but that's
So
it.
that comment was placed by one of you guys on the previous video showing me how that I messed up by not knowing all the context into why they was debating the way they did, which I appreciate because honestly speaking, I did not know. Right? So I do read the comments. So continue comment. Alright, so the atheist we are looking at today is Atheist Ian. So I'm saying if I had my long hair, ginger, and if I was white, I would look just like him. That's not funny. But he brought in a lot of questions that I personally feel that you guys ask all the time. How do I know this? So when I evangelize and ask people questions and try to bring the gospels to them, these are the types of questions that we often get. So I personally feel like Jordan didn't do a great job in answering them publicly, but in his defense, he did say he did not know, and which we appreciate, and I hope that you guys appreciate that he's being honest. So, what did Ian say? And by the way, I'm not going to play too much of the clips of Jubilee because I do not want to get copyrighted. I personally don't like that. Please stop copyrighting me. I'm just trying to make content. Alright, so the question that Ian had was, number one, why does God say you can keep slaves or keep people as property? And why does he say you can beat them with a rod? Now, most of the time you guys are referring to Leviticus 25 to 44 to 46, Exodus 20, Exodus 21, which talks about this and looks like that God is condoning or even advocating for slavery. Now, is this true? No, context matters. And we must also keep in mind Exodus 21 verse 16 says that whoever steals a man and sells him and anyone found in his possession of him shall be put to death. Right? Now, yes, you might say, well, it's contradictory because one moment it's saying you can and the next moment it's saying you can't, which, yes, I understand. But hear me out. So, slavery was rules put in place to preserve, not to condone, because it was evident that every nation was doing slavery, hence why the laws stipulated this is the way that needs to be run, where they were treated fairly. Now it's diabolical to be saying that treating slaves fairly, that don't make no sense. But hear me out. Now it's important to remember Matthew 19:8-9. I know it's New Testament, why are we quoting that? Hold on. What's happening here? So when Jesus is talking to the people, he says Moses permitted divorce, but for God, he will consider it immoral. What am I saying? I'm basically showing you guys that there were certain things in the law that were put in place not as a universal standard forever, but as a way to preserve humanity so that they be able to be eligible for the free gift of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, pointing to us that OT wasn't to put in place as a universal standard, but rather God used that as an aspect of bringing people incrementally, right? Till the standard of Jesus Christ was proclaimed on the earth. Could God have totally eradicated slavery? Absolutely. However, as I said previously, it was pretty evident that everyone was doing slavery, but yes, slavery is immoral, and in fact, it is a sin. And if God were to eradicate it at that time, you would not be here at this time. Similar story with Adam and Eve. A lot of people say that it was immoral for God to curse them for simply eating fruit, but you don't see the bigger picture. Remember, they chose to go against what they knew was wrong, because God said, do not do it. Yet God said, you know what, I'm going to have mercy. I'm going to use what just happened to try and preserve you guys so that you guys can now be eligible for the saving of Jesus Christ. So what are we saying? We are basically saying that just because the Old Testament law has rules in place to basically treat slaves fairly, again, I know it's hard to hear that, but in a way in which that both slave and masters could be saved, because both ends of the stick are sinners at the end of the day. This is why we say that we see in the New Testament this come to light when it says there's no female, Jew, no Gentile, slave, no master. Why? Because it's showing us that the law was not our universal standard. That was not. It was just a means to carry humanity or to preserve humanity until we can take on the sacrifice that was done on the cross through Jesus Christ. Now, whether you want to believe that or not, it's totally up to you, but that is what's being pushed throughout the gospel. When we see this, next he asks the question, why does a good God command genocide in Deuteronomy, Numbers, and Samuel? Now, he's referring specifically to the Amalekites, but if you know anything about the Amalekites, we do see them existing in, like, for example, the book of Esther, which mentions you could say, descendants of the Amalekites, showing that it was not a genocidal thing, but rather it was a matter of the land, the people that stayed in the land, that is the practices of that land, of that nation. So, yes, God did in fact command that the Israelites go and kill the Amalekites in that specific area, right? We see that in 1 Samuel 15, I believe. However, what was the reason that God did that? Why? What's so treacherous that he commanded Israel to wipe the Amalekites out? It was pretty simple. We've seen this with the Canaanites in earlier parts of the Bible as well. But it was mainly because the Amalekites were people, or was a nation that used to oppress Israel and would antagonize the nation of Israel, which we also know was the promised seed that God used to bring about Jesus Christ. So as a response, God brought judgment on those people because of what they've done. In fact, God even inflicted severe punishment where mass amounts of Israelites were killed. Mass amounts of Israelites were killed because of the things that they committed. And it wasn't specifically Jews all over the world, but specifically the ones that lived in the land, right? And that was one story. Another one was, which is the main reason that God actually commanded the slaughtering of the Amalekites in that area, was because they used to serve a god called Baal, which they created a statue out of, that they would heat during a certain time of the year and partake in drunkenness and all sexual immoralities, and at the end of it all, put their newborn babies on the statue's hands and burn the babies alive. It's the barbecue that Ian was talking about. So Ian, that barbecue you were referring to was not something Yahweh condoned. It was actually another god called Baal, which we know is the demons and devils, and obviously not God. So the very people that you are trying to defend here, they're the ones that had a child barbecue. And then he questions God's ethics. He asks the question about, does God fit Christian ethics? Now, I'm not sure what he means by this, but to be fair, if you know anything about Christian ethics or Christian morality, it comes from God himself. So what I'm assuming he's asking is whether or not he thinks that the Old Testament God and the New Testament God is the same one. And in fact, it is. He is not realizing we do see the merciful side of God in both the Old Testament, as mentioned with Adam and Eve, in terms of preserving the human race through the law, as well as we see it on the literal cross. An innocent man dying for people that literally did the worst of the worst. Sinners, you and I. And at the same time, we still see his sovereignty and his wrath in the Old Testament when he would command such killings because of ruthless and sinful nations, as well as we find in the book of Acts, he literally struck a couple down because they lied about the money they had collected after selling their land or house, if I remember correctly, as well as he literally killed a perfect person, Jesus Christ. Do you not see the mirroring image from Old T to New Testament? It's the same God. I don't understand what he's trying to get at this. Like at this point, Ian, stop. Another question Ian asked is, can a perfect God change? And Peterson tries to understand what's his meaning of perfect. It's obviously someone or something that is totally perfect. There's nothing wrong with him at all. So if you're asking, can God change from good to evil or change his change from perfect to non-perfect? No, it's impossible. That's what makes him God. However, can God change the method in which he maintains perfection or his holiness? Absolutely. We see this um, from transitioning from the law to grace. Law to grace. Still maintaining God being holy, God being pure, God being sovereign, and God being a judge of all. Do you see that, Ian? Do you see that? Another question is why God didn't just make us perfect, so we didn't have to go through this and we'd operate in love and this and that. Ian, why? By now you should know this if you're sitting with around people of that intelligence. God did make us perfect and we still chose to do the wrong thing, which is a fault on our side. Now, if you're asking why God just didn't give us a mind to think and just made us as robots, I can't imagine anyone enjoying that. I like the fact that we can make our own decisions. What makes one of the greatest thing about my walk with Christ is that I came to Him, even though He was always there, and rejected, and I rejected, and I rejected. And finally, when I came to Him, He still came. He still allowed me to come through and had His grace upon me. So, point is, we were made perfect. We still chose to do wrong, and that's a fault in our part. You can't blame God for something you and I do. And then finally, he asks us the question, or rather implies that God cannot be all-knowing. Number one, if we have free will, or if God is all-knowing, then we don't have free will. Now, this doesn't work like that. It literally doesn't work. You must understand that you have a free will to watch this video. I have a free will to make this video. However, your will has limited bounds into my will of making another video. My will has a limited set of bounds in changing your will into changing your mind or following my content or becoming Christian. Do you see that? And God's will has unlimited boundaries in controlling whatever, whenever He chooses to do so. Another thing is, just because I know the sun is going to come up tomorrow doesn't take away or doesn't mean that I'm all-knowing or that I made the sun come up. No, I know it's going to happen. Just like God knows you're going to mess up. Hence why He's like, I'm going to come down and help and save you through Jesus Christ. That's what all-knowing is all about. It's not about taking away your free will. Everyone has wills. Everyone's wills can affect someone else's, but obviously to some extent it's limited because we are, again, human. However, God's will is obviously eternal, is obviously sovereign, and is unlimited. And you can't fault Him because He's God. That's His nature. Now, I hope I answered all of the questions accurately. In fact, if I didn't, if I missed out anything, again, go down in the comments and tell me what I missed out. I appreciate that, by the way, because I had a lot of discussions with you guys in the previous video, trying to identify what was the things we mixed up. Like, I genuinely didn't know that they changed the title of the video from Christian featuring Jordan Peterson to Jordan Peterson First in 2018. I genuinely did not know that. Again, I am from South Africa, so the time zones are different. So when the video came out, I watched it about 19 or 16 hours after the actual publishing. Hence why I thought it was a JP versus atheist. And it was kind of weird to think, why did JP use a lot of Christian and why did the atheist associate Christian, like the Christian God, with Jordan Peterson? It was crazy to think that. I should have saw that anyways. I should have found it weird in some sense. But again, I thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like content like this. We are going to be doing more like this. So stay subscribed, so stay tuned in to be not like Ian and others.